Hello, I'm 56 and I'm going to be going over some of the basics of modding. First and foremost, you'll want an IDE, Visual Studio Community, or Writer, especially if it's a .edu email, so that a lot of people use. The other things you'll want are dnspy, which you can use to look at the game's code, and the FSM viewer by Nezrak, which allows you to look at what are called Playmaker finite state machines. And they also are a significant portion of the game's code, like that. So to get started, you'll just want to create a new solution in your IDE. You're going to want a class library of our .NET framework, not .NET Core, because that's what Unity uses, and you want version 3.5. That is what this version of Unity uses. Simply name it something and create the solution. So to actually begin modding, we're going to need the modding API. You can get this by opening the installer. I already have it, so I'm not going to go open it again. We're going to need to add a reference to that. There's a references tab. In Visual Studio, this will be on the right side of the screen, but not a huge deal. Right click, add reference. Visual Studio has a browse button. We have an add from. Not a huge deal. Assembly C#.dll is what you'll want. It's under your Hollow Knight installation, Hollow Knight data managed. This contains most of the game's code, and it's what the modding API patches. You're going to inherit from mod under modding, and usually use a constructor, but the modding API actually calls initialize after mods have finished preloading and such, so that's what we're going to want to use. You can do basic debugging with like print debugging, and we have logs. There are a bunch of logs of different levels. A lot of the time log is simple enough, especially for just testing stuff. We can then build, and we're going to have to get the output DLL, which is under bin debug. Take this DLL and put it in mods, which is under the managed folder we talked about earlier. Now if you open the game, you'll see your mod in the top left. It appears I didn't put it in mods properly. So let's do it again. Don't know what I messed up. Oh, let's see, it's class 1 because I forgot to rename it. So by default your mod is named what the class is called. You can have a different name if you want like spaces or something by making a constructor and calling base with a string. So yeah, we just declare method body. And you'll see that we also have that log in the bottom left. We can build again if we want that new name, but I'll forgo actually showing that for a little bit. As an example, I'm going to make, let's just say, a mod which heals you when you kill an enemy. Majority of the coding you'll be done is using hooks, which are how you can interact with game events. A lot of hooks are provided by the API under mod hooks, and we can get like an enemy kill hook. Let's say record kill for journal on kill, and we can create that method that's going to be called by just alt entering that. It's a lot easier. I'm going to format that real fast. And now we can simply do a heal here, right? But how do we know what method to call, what game stuff to use? Well, that's where dnspy comes in. We can open assembly C#, which is where the majority of the game's code is located, as I've said. And a lot of stuff is under hero controller for the actual knight, and we can just look up health. You'll see a lot of calls, and we can see, if you go to health, this is under player data, which is where a lot of save information is. You can actually see where it's set by doing analyze. In this case, you can see that there's actually not much, and that's because I've opened the modded API DLL, and that converts a lot of the calls so that they're easier to mod. So I'm going to go back with the vanilla version, which I'd also recommend you do, and we can look up health and just try and find it again under player data. Seems to be a lot of scrolling. I'm just going to go to player data and go to health again. And I happened to control F onto it, but what I wanted to show was if you click on health and you right click analyze, you can see everywhere where it's assigned, and that can help you a lot. There's also a keyboard shortcut, as you can see, and we can see that add health is actually called by hero controllers on health, and this event it sends to the proxy FSM is what actually sets up the UI, so we're going to want to use this. Hero controller is a singleton, so you can access it with .instance, and then we can just add 1 health. And you'll see that this at first doesn't work out, and that's because we're going to need a few references from Unity, because hero controller inherits from Mona behavior, which is a Unity class. So we're just going to need Unity engine and core module. And now we can build this. And just paste over the mod again. And now if I go to Dirtmouth, this random save I have, and I get hit a few times, you can see I healed back when I killed that guy, and I can kill this husk and this crawlid, get more HP. I can take more damage and heal it back as well. So, you know, just works out. This logging we see in the bottom left is where your mod's logs will go. They also go into a file which is under your saves folder. It's called modlog.txt. You can see that. To actually get the log in game, you're going to need to enable a setting. It's under modding API to global settings.json. And you're going to need to add show debug log in game true in bool values. Another very important way of dealing with things is if you want to hook some arbitrary method. Let's say look at something else, like there's bounce or something, or let's do something on dash, right? So actually we can make it so we can always dash, for example, right? There's a can dash method, and there's no hook for this, you know, in mod hooks, right? So if we look, there's only dash being pressed down and dash vector hook, right? So what we can do is we could figure out how to get this true, or what we can use is something called a monomod runtime detour, more simply just on hooks, which work out really easily. You do on dot the namespace, if there is one, then the class and the method. So in this case, can dash, and we just make another receiver. So on can dash, and we can alt enter create that. So this gives you an org and a self. So the self is because it's an instance method. As you can see, it's not static, and that self is the instance itself. The org is the original method. So if we want to get what the original method, if we want to call the original method and have its side effects happen, you know, we can do that. If we want to modify what it gives, we can do that. Or we can just ignore it, which is what we're going to do. And we can just return true. And this will let us always dash. So now if we go to Explorer, and you know, we copy it over again, if we go in game, you can see we can dash search when we're not supposed to be able to, which lets us do some great things, you know. And that's around all for the basics of Hollow Knight modding. You can get pretty far using this. If you want to go into some more detail, I'll probably make another video, but there's also some API documents under radiance.host/API docs. They have a lot of information on stuff like charms and basics of logging and classes. This one's to do, but Sala is working on that right now, and he added a lot to that already. And there's a lot of hook information and such, so I'd highly recommend that. So that's about all for the basics.